Welcome to Bleed Blue, the SWOSU Athletics podcast, bringing you interviews and insights from around Southwestern Oklahoma State University.
Even if you are just an alumni at that point, it doesn't matter. You still bleed blue, and you always look back and see what's going on at SWOSU because it is a special place. And some people, I don't think, realize how amazing it is.
Be in attack mode for 9 innings.
Southwestern get behind their Capital. Looking here.
Touchdown Bulldog!
Around here, we bleed blue.
Now here's your host, Hailey Tucker.
Welcome back, Bulldog Nation, to the newest SWOSU Athletics podcast, Bleed Blue. We're here on our 6th episode of the year with our very special guest, Coach Kelsi Musick. Coach, it's so good to see you. I've missed you so much.
It's so good to see you, Tuck. I miss you.
And like I told you before we started here, this is going to be a very in-depth. We're going to learn every part of Coach Kelsi Musick today. This is what's going to go on.
Ha ha. Not a chance, Tuck.
But honestly, I know a lot about you that maybe some people don't know because,
Yes.
you are, the way that your coaching style is very, in your face, but you're also very loving as well. So can you kind of talk about that a little bit?
The one thing that we love to do here is, Coach Anderson is my very best friend. And so we have a family type atmosphere. And so when we recruit our Lady Bulldogs, we want them to join our family. We want to get to know them. We want the very best for them. We want to see them succeed. We want to grow them and see them, grow and mature from their freshman year to their senior year. And, we get really close to everybody, and, you guys literally become part of our family. You're always one of our girls, one of our daughters. And that's just the way we do things here. And I think that, like you said, I'm a very intense coach, but at the same time, I genuinely care about you on and off the floor and want the very best for you.
You can definitely see that on the court, both from you and Coach Anderson. And maybe some people don't know this, but you actually were an assistant coach for Coach Anderson at Fresno State. Can you kind of talk about that, how you got your career started there?
After I finished playing, I had the opportunity to go coach at Fresno State. And I think that it allowed me to learn a lot as far as, initially I was the director of operations. So I learned a lot of behind the scenes things as far as budgets and travel and just organizing and planning and all those things that are super important that a lot of people don't realize that you have to do behind the scenes to make a program function and work properly. And yes, Coach Anderson was one of our players, and it was neat. I wasn't very much older than her at the time. I was young, and I had to learn how to, separate myself. And, being a coach can be a lonely job, but at the same time, it's very rewarding. And so to have that opportunity to get to know her and just her personality and who she was and what she stood for, when I got the opportunity to come to SWOSU, finding someone that was going to be loyal and had the same goals and beliefs as me was more important than someone with tons of experience. And it's definitely worked out for us.
And you both go through experiences together, not only on the basketball floor, but also you two, when I first came in, you both were pregnant and it was crazy. But, Coach Anderson is pregnant right now. I feel like I have to ask Coach, what's going on with you?
Oh, I am done. I want no part of that. She's going to have to fly solo on this one, and when Maddox and Cam were born back in 2013, they were 11 days apart. In 2015, when Titus and Carrington were born, they were literally about 1 month apart. And so, of course, we have built-in best friends for our children, but I apologize to her on a regular that this one is going to have to find a best friend because I won't be providing it.
And I don't think people understand having 2 pregnant coaches during a preseason at 5 a.m. Not something I would recommend, but it was awesome. I learned a lot.
Well, it made it tougher.
It made me a lot tougher, yes. But, as as I talk about my playing days, people know how good of a player you were back at Cameron University. Can you talk about that? You know, you were a 4-year starter there, point guard, number 12, you know.
Repping that number. When I first got there, we weren't very good, and I had never been on like a losing team. And so my freshman year, to be a part of that was really extremely hard. And no matter what, your freshman year in college is just a hard thing. No matter how ready you think you are to leave your family or to get out there on your own, it's a hard time. In my opinion, in pretty much every freshman's life. And so, that was a difficult time, but at the same time, it helped me learn how to grow, to persevere, and to, be a part of a rebuild. And that's something we had to do here at SWOSU, was to rebuild this program. And being able to go through that at some point in my life, I think helped me to be able to persevere and stay strong and know that if you can make goals and you have a plan, that you can, I put it into action, and, lucky for us, it worked out.
And I always wanted to know how your coaching or how your playing style related to your coaching style now. Were you, kind of a tough player? You were I know that you're the most competitive person on this planet. So was that how you were in college?
I definitely was. And I was an extremely hard worker. I think a lot of that came from my high school coach. Mrs. Gore was an extremely tough coach, and a lot of people don't get that in high school. And I had her from my 7th grade year to my senior year. And honestly, the majority of the things that I've learned came from her. I have to definitely give her a shout out. And, most people couldn't have survived playing for her, but at the same time, if I could go back, I would do it all again. Because it taught me the true game of basketball. She didn't just teach us plays. She actually taught us the game. She taught us discipline and hard work. And she taught us all of those life lessons that a lot of people don't have the opportunity to learn in this day and age, in my opinion. So it was definitely worth it. And those kinds of things I think carried over. I was definitely one of the hardest workers on my basketball team. I didn't ever like to get beat in a sprint. I wanted to finish first. I was competitive. If we were playing, 5-on-5, I wanted to win. And if I had to call out my own plays, I'd figure it out, because I wanted to win all the time, even if it was just a shooting game. It didn't matter. I was always extremely competitive. I always trained hard in the summer to prepare myself for the preseason and seasons, and I always took pride in that. And so that was just, I think, something that's carried over. And so, as far as coaching goes, the one thing I've always told you guys is I will never make you do something I've never done. And I hold true to that. I've never made any of my players do something that I've never physically done. So I know that it's possible.
And as you talk about that, I just feel the preseason death coming through me. And, we've always talked about that during my senior season. We continue to say our preseason is the hardest thing in the world. That's why we are so good in late March. And you talk about that a lot. So how do you, prepare for a preseason, especially now during COVID? I mean, how are you preparing right now?
The one thing we had to do a little different is preseason, I think, is a lot longer. Even though we're done with preseason and we're actually getting to practice, we didn't go 3 days a week, because it's going to be such a long time before we have the opportunity to play a game. I'm not trying to wear them out. On a normal, non-COVID time, we run 3 mornings a week and we're lifting 4 days a week. We still lifted 4 days a week, but we only ran 2 days a week. And we tried to practice, a little bit more when we were permitted to. So those things were a little bit different. You have to take into mind that when you have to wait months before you play a game instead of 2.5 to 3, I have to keep their minds right and their attention span, and we have to continue to grow. And so, we're not trying to do too much, but we're trying to do enough to where we still have, we put them through that preseason. We made them get up early. We still did some of those things. We're still lifting. I think the one thing we're doing different now, we're still lifting, where sometimes when we start official practice, we don't have the opportunity to lift as much because you're gearing up for games. And that's one thing that we're focusing on right now, is maintaining that strength that will allow us to be able to play a lot of games in a short amount of time once we're allowed to.
And, this is your 12th season as the head coach at SWOSU, and you've proven that your program, that your workouts, that everything does work. And so, I'm going to take you back to 2012 when you had that team. You didn't know if they were going to, be great, like you kind of did with our senior season. You knew we were going to be great. But they ended up winning the GAC Conference Championship. And I know you've talked about that game with me many times, but it's fun to hear about.
It was. Our first 2 seasons here were hard. Our first season was really hard. And that second season, I probably thought they might try to fire me or something because we weren't very good still. But that third season, I just remember going to the conference tournament, and we really came on in the second semester. We won some games. In the first semester, we lost a couple we probably shouldn't have, in my opinion. But, we got to the tournament, we were really playing well. I mean, we just continued to get better and better throughout the season, and we were really coming together. I had 6 seniors that year, and they really came on at the end. I remember the Euler twins, we were about to play, I think, in the championship game, and we were in the locker room, and one of them, I think it was Mariah, but I can't remember exactly. But one of the Euler twins came up and they said, "Coach, we're about to win 3 games in one weekend, and we only won 3 games our very first year." And just to be able to see that transition and their support, when we made it to the Elite 8 and to that championship game, there was a handful of those girls that were on that first championship team in the bleachers. They have real jobs, and they're grown women now, and they took off work to spend time supporting the team and the program that helped build them. And I think that speaks volumes of what we're able to do here. But they still bleed blue, and that's kind of what it's all about. And I think that's the great thing about SWOSU is once you get here, you fall in love, and it's hard. You never want to forget those memories, but you're always a part of it in some form or fashion. Even if you are just an alumni at that point, it doesn't matter. You still bleed blue, and you always look back and see what's going on at SWOSU because it is a special place. And some people, I don't think, realize how amazing it is, but it's a really special place, and it's an amazing, spot to be a part of.
And fast forward 6 years from that team to, my senior season team, did you think, I remember coming on my visit and telling you I wanted to win a national championship, and you said, we do too. And did you really think, were we going to make it to the national championship that year?
I believed it with all my heart. I think going in to the initial regional tournament, and when we got named the 2 seed, that just really motivated me. I've never been a super outspoken person in the simple fact, but I remember standing in the lobby of the PCEC, and I called what was going to happen, and it did happen when we went up to Fort Hays, and I said it out loud. And I used to not really talk about our goals out loud. There was a point in my career when I didn't feel like we were quite ready for that. But by the time we got to where, like your freshman year on, I think that being able to speak things into existence was a huge part of what we did. And I believed with all my heart. When I tell recruits, when I told you that we would win a national championship, I believe it's going to happen. We were close. We were so close. We could have tasted it. And, that still haunts me to this day. But at the end of the day, I believe with all my heart that we have the capabilities here to win a national title.
And it still haunts me as well, so I'm right there with you. But, there were some awesome memories made during that season, especially during that regional tournament. I mean, Talk about a little bit, what was going through your mind? I have the ball during the Central Missouri game. Hayden passes it to me. I dribble. You knew I was about to make that no-look pass to Spurley. So kind of talk about what was going through your head when Tabor Beer made that 3-point shot.
I think that the great thing is I prepare you guys for that throughout the season, which a lot of people probably think I'm a little crazy. I don't call a lot of timeouts because I want you guys to learn how to grow and to be in maybe not the best situation, but to be able to find your way out of it, because I can't make buckets for you, but I can train you and prepare you for those moments of pressure. And I feel like that's one thing we do a good job of. We were down a lot of times throughout that season, but I had the confidence in not only our team, but in each of you players and our system and what we do, that I knew that we would prevail. And I think in that moment, I remember I even specifically asked you guys at that timeout right before we advanced the ball. I was like, do you guys want me to advance it? And you guys were like, no, that's not what we do, coach. And I was like, all right, let's do what we do. I was like, we got to penetrate and pitch, share the basketball, have good spacing. And it just worked out for us because the great thing is we knew they were going to key in on you and Hayden. Everyone knew that. But at the same time, everyone has to step up. And that's the one thing we preach is everybody has a role. And it might not be the leading scorer every night or maybe the best rebounder, but you have a role. And that moment exemplified what we do on a regular basis of everyone embracing their role. And Spurley did what she was supposed to by making that baseline cut, and it drew the defense in. And yeah, you could have made that pass to her, but the three was open, and we live and die by the 3-point line. So I think it was just a perfect ending to a great story and what we do here. And it totally represents SWOSU women's basketball to a T.
Oh, exactly. Because I think Tabor was a sophomore at this point, a sophomore making one of the biggest shots probably in her career. But most people ask me all the time about our program. They say, how do you not get tired? You're playing a dribble drive offense. You're also playing a full court press. And I remember the day that you and Coach Anderson came in and said, we're going to run a full court press this year. And I think we looked around like, what is she talking about? So what inspired you guys to start that? And it works so well.
I knew we had to do something different. We were good the year before. I thought we kind of fell off in February, your junior year, and we weren't able to maintain that level of play that we needed to. We made it to the national tournament, but making it wasn't good enough for me. And I knew it wasn't good enough for you guys. You guys wanted more and deserved more. And I knew we had to do something different. We always played fast on offense, but teams wanted to slow us down. And so if we just got back and we played 50, our 50 or half court defense, then they were able to use the whole shot clock. And that's not what we do. I knew if I wanted to control the pace and control the tempo of the game, I had to do something different. So I started watching film on some other teams that full court pressed, and I implemented, our chaos, and I tweaked it to fit what we do and made it ours. And that's the one thing I feel like we always do here. We tweak it and make it ours, even though a lot of people might run the dribble drive. Most people don't run it like us, or a lot of people might full court press, but they're not running it like us. And the way we do things, it's a little different. It's a little quirky, but we believe in it, and it definitely works. So I think the biggest thing with chaos was being able to control the tempo on both ends of the floor, not just the offensive end, but we had to really turn up the pace defensively and force the issue. I mean, we weren't always the fastest as all five of us. I mean, you're not the fastest player on the floor, but we put you in positions to be successful to where we could use your length. We could use your IQ, with Bethany back in the back. I mean, she led the league in steals as a post player. I mean, it was just a phenomenal thing, and it worked out. And I know you all thought I was crazy, but I think now you look back and you probably appreciate it a little bit more now than you did at the moment when you thought you were dying.
Oh, definitely. When we were, scoring hundreds of points, and we're always in the top in the nation in scoring points. And how do you think that contributes? Like sometimes you would tell us, we might give up a few easy buckets here and there because that's what a full court press does. But how do you think our scoring contributes to us being so good?
I think it really sets the bar. It makes people focus so much on what we do offensively that they really don't have a chance to focus on what we did defensively. And so no matter what, they're so worried about what we did, because we can score so effectively that they didn't have time. And how do you prepare for a full court press when you've never really, if you don't do that on a regular? We did that on a regular, so we were able to be successful. But forcing that issue defensively allowed us to get some easy buckets and some transition buckets that helped us, and to kind of open that gap up. And I always told you guys, in the first half, it might not show up. It might not show up on the scoreboard, but it's the third and the fourth quarter when you wear teams down and they don't have the legs to finish at the pace. But I've trained you to have the legs to finish at that pace, and that's the biggest difference. And I think it just gave us a mental edge too. When no matter what, when you go through a preseason that's rigorous or you do something that's a little different, it gives you a mental edge that allows you to be mentally tough in moments when you might not have been able to be that.
And yeah, and whenever my team did graduate, we graduated those 4 seniors, and then coming back to the next year, a lot of people doubted you guys that you weren't going to be the same, that you weren't going to be at as high caliber scoring, but you proved them wrong. I mean, you come out of the gate, you beat D1 Tulsa. I mean, you win the regular season conference tournament, you're playing in the regular tournament, and then COVID hits. And then, you go to the national tournament, and then COVID hits. But kind of talk about, what did you walk in, talk to the girls about? I know that had to be a difficult conversation.
Preparing for that year, I knew that everyone would be doubting us. And I love motivation like that. I like when people try to tell me that I can't do something. I remember I've had coaches tell me, or, other people tell me like, hey, I don't know if you'll be able to make it or do this year. And I'm like, thanks for the motivation. It's going to happen. And I love to prove people wrong. And I think, oh, sorry. Okay.
So this is why I wanted TT in there. That would not have happened with
I
TT.
know, if you sit still for too long, this automatic light. So I apologize. Back to seeing me. But I think the biggest thing was we initially talked about that. I tried to use that as motivation throughout preseason, as going into the season, that a lot of people were going to doubt us and wouldn't think we could be successful. Going into season, like you said, we beat Tulsa, and, most people definitely didn't think we could go beat a D1 team. And then going up to Pitt State, and we won both of those against 2 really good MIAA teams. They were really tough contests, but they really rose to the occasion. And I think that we came together and won some games that people doubted. A few of the losses, we had 2 losses without, we had a loss to Lubbock Christian without Tyra Askett, and we had a loss to Southeastern without Makaira. And, they're 2 of our top players and, leading scorers for the most part. And so, we had to face a little adversity as well throughout that season. But at the same time, we were still able to finish, and we won games when we had to, and that was important. And it was really impressive of the seniors and of our returners to be able to, at the end of the season, it was you have to win to be a co-champion at that point. And they did. We were down against Arkansas Tech on senior day, and Tyra Askett hits that deep 3, and we end up winning. And we were down by double digits the majority of that game. And just to see their resilience and their tenacity and their being able to face that adversity and rise to the challenge, I think was quite impressive and showed of what we've been able to build here. And then, like you said, we made it to the national tournament, and we had a horrible outing in the conference tournament. We played terrible. I mean, there's no other easy way to say it. And my players know that. But at the end of the day, we made it to the national tournament. We got that at-large bid, I think hugely because of what we've been able to do at this school and the program we've been able to build. But we made it, and it was probably honestly the best week of practice we had for the whole season. It was the best practices. We had really, I felt like, turned the corner and matured and taken that adversity of that loss, and we're about to turn it into something positive. And, we get to Missouri, and we even got to practice on the floor, and then we got the call that it was over. And that was an extremely hard conversation, because I literally had to tell them on the bus while we're driving, because there's no other way. I mean, it's going to get released on social media. Everyone has their phones out. I had to go back there and tell them. And that was probably one of the hardest, if not the hardest, conversations I've had to have with a team, to say, hey, we don't get a chance to redeem ourselves. We don't get a chance to see if we can make a run into this national tournament. And it was extremely hard. And, I finally was able to put my words on paper, and, I think I made a Facebook post, and they turned it into, Cope made it into an amazing video, because that's what he does. But it was an extremely hard and different and trying time, but I'm hoping that those seniors will take what they've been able to go through and, grow and make it in life, and be able to look back and realize that even though we had an abrupt ending, they had an amazing career as well.
And now you get to build off of that with those returners, with Tabor Beer, with Makaira, Freshman of the Year, and Bethany Franks. Those are the ones that are on top of my head right now. But what are you looking forward to most this season, and how are your teams looking right now?
I'm excited. We're still learning. I've got, we have 2 transfers. We have those returners back. My freshman from Lubbock is looking good. We're excited to have the opportunity to actually practice, because we did have a lot of limitations, and, the preseason was a little different than normal. Obviously things on campus and everything's different with COVID, but just to have the opportunity to have some normalcy when we do step on the floor we love it. And like I said, it's hard to kind of we have to kind of keep their attention because it's a long time before we get to play a game. And that makes it hard too. But as far as how they're looking, I think they're really starting to understand. They're learning each other and playing together. And I'm excited. I think the one thing is we don't have a 15-man roster this year. We have 11 players, but we have 11 really good quality players. And I think that's the one thing that's going to really be able to help us. When we're going up and down or we're playing 5-on-5, there's not some huge drop off. We can really compete and push each other every day in practice. And I think that's important. And they just got to continue to learn the offense. And, we'll slowly start implementing some of our defense and the different things we want to do. And every year's different. We like to make tweaks and we like to make some changes and to mix it up, keep people on their toes. So we're excited about, the opportunity to continue practicing and getting better each and every day.
And Coach, we're nearing the end of this podcast. And as you know, this podcast is Bleed Blue. So we like to ask our guests every time, why do you bleed SWOSU blue?
A lot of people, when I got this job, doubted. I was young and they probably thought they were a little bit crazy for hiring a 20-something-year-old head coach. But at the end of the day, this has become home. I wanted to come back to SWOSU. I wanted to be closer to my family. And I wanted to be a head coach. That was a big goal of mine, and I wanted to prove that I could do it. And SWOSU has become home. It has become a family, and I love what we've been able to build here. And it has been a huge part of my life for the last 12 years. And it's exciting to see where we've been, but where we're going and what we've been able to do. And the one thing about it is like I said before, once you become a dog, you're always a dog, and you want to bleed blue forever. And I think that's important. And that's the one thing I do love about SWOSU is the way that people embrace what we have here and how the legacy always continues.
Well, thanks so much, Coach, for joining us today. I wish I could give you a big hug, even though you hate hugs, but I miss you and love you.
I'm getting better.
You're getting better with them now that I'm gone, huh?
Well, a little bit. I won't say a whole lot. A little bit, Okay. I will hug my players. That's about it. Everyone else gets the side hug or the handshake.
we do the full embrace, and I hope that people can see, your loving side. They see the coach on the floor, but you are an incredible person and loving person. So I really appreciate you for coming on to our podcast today.
Well, thanks. I miss you, Tuck.
I miss you too. You're going to make me cry. So I'm going to do the outro now before I cry here. So thank you all for joining us on episode 6 of Bleed Blue, the newest SWOSU Athletics podcast. We'll see you next week for our 7th episode and our next special guest.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Bleed Blue, the SWOSU Athletics podcast. To learn more about Bulldog Athletics, visit us on the web at www.swosuathletics.com. And as always, go Dogs. Subscribe to Bleed Blue, the SWOSU Athletics podcast, wherever you get your podcasts.